Good morning. We're out here at the Rosebud Continuum in Land O'Lakes, Florida, where we're involved in all kinds of sustainable food production, appropriate design, and really cool concepts and initiatives like this one here, this solar hot water heater made of just some copper piping and some ingenuity. And here we have Dr. T.H. Culhane. He's going to explain it in detail.
Thank you, and that was Jerry Camellis, a graduate of the Patel College of Global Sustainability at USF Tampa, one of our students in the Food, Energy, Water Nexus. And Jerry says is absolutely true. A little bit of ingenuity goes a long way, particularly when you do things that people say you can't do. And when I was in high school in the 1970s, there was a lot of disinformation and misinformation going around, particularly concerning solar. We were at a time in our nation's history when we had just gone through an oil crisis, the embargo, when a lot of Arabs from oil-producing countries went to Harvard and went to Yale and Stanford and went out to Berkeley and went to you name the college. They went to top-ranking colleges in the U.S. and they learned our game, and they went back and they formed a consolidated group or union of oil producers, and they said, we're not going to sell you this oil at below market price anymore. We're done with that, and it caused a crisis in the world, the OPEC oil crisis. But what are we going to do? We can't get oil super cheap. We can't just fritter it away and just burn it driving for 10 miles a gallon. So that led to some innovations that have been buried for a long time to suddenly begin to get funded and recognition again. And one of them was solar hot water, which had been around for, well, since the ancient Egyptians, speaking of the Middle East. Certainly the ancient Egyptians, the ancient Sumerians, and what is now Iraq were using solar energy. It was well known that if you painted a pool black, then the sun going through the clear water and hitting the black surface would heat up the pool. And so people bathed in warm water in the Middle East thousands of years ago. It's not like this is a difficult technology. Here we basically have a pool. It's a box. And in it we have, you can't see it right now because of the morning dew completely blocking it, but we basically inside this box, wipe off the dew, we have a black painted corrugated steel plate, and on it we have just taken copper pipe that we've painted black and bolted it down so that it touches that surface area. So think of this as a pool painted black. Now, you know this from pool heaters. A lot of people here in Florida have black plastic pipes going on their roof, and there's a pump that circulates the water from their pool through the black pipes on the roof and back to the pool, and that warms up the pool. What happens, though, makes it inefficient, is that there's no way to contain the heat that is lost through convection, because winds will come and it'll pass by the black coils and it'll just cool them off. That's what a radiator does, right? So any radiator heat exchanger, the air is carrying it off. So of course all you have to do is put a clear surface on top that traps the heat in but still allows light in. We used in the past glass, of course, and we've used plexiglass. This is the first time I know of where anybody has used stretch wrap. Stretch wrap comes in these rolls and is ridiculously cheap. It's what they use at airports to wrap luggage, and you can buy it in Home Depot or Lowe's or any hardware store, or even in decoration stores where they sell party stuff, and you can buy it in various colors. Stretch wrap is really good, it turns out, because while it's not working right now because of the morning dew completely making it opaque to light, it clears off after the sun starts shining on it, and then the light gets through, hits that black surface, heats up the pipes, and then goes through this black hose here into the tank. And if you come around, I'll show you where the water's going into the tank. I'm stupid to do it this way, but I also didn't have a lot of money, so these hoses were expensive. They were about $15. And so this is a washing machine hose, so I wrapped it around the back so it would have a rise up all the time, because you don't want hot water to have to fall. It won't. Hot water is like bubbles. Hot water rises, cold water falls. So there has to be an upward rise for the water, the hot water, to go up here, and then the cold water is coming down from the bottom of the tank and just flowing down hoses, and they can be any hoses. I didn't need to be hot water hoses here, and into the bottom. And then, of course, because the tank is filled with water all the time, the water level is up here, which means this is going to completely fill with water, an unbroken water column up to here, and the hot water is going to exit here because it's lighter or less dense than the cold water and enter the tank, while cold water goes to the bottom and circulates. And all day long, it's called a thermosiphon. Thermo for heat, siphon for sucking. Thermosiphon, that heated water is going to rise, the cold water is going to fall, it's going to go through this heat exchanger, taking the rays of the sun, the visible light, not the heat of the sun, the visible light, transforming into heat when it hits the black surface, and then not being able to escape because of the stretch wrap. Now, there is loss. Stretch wrap is not the best thing, but I wanted to demonstrate that in our off-grid home here, we could bathe in solar hot water when the sun is shining the least expensive way possible. Another myth that was told to us is, when I was a high school student, is, what do you do at night? Everybody who uses solar is going to have to take showers in the evening because then the sun will go down, there's no more solar heating, and the water will cool off. And I remember a high school teacher saying solar was unfeasible, even though Jimmy Carter had just put solar panels on the White House, galvanizing the nation into a solar renaissance. Even though California and Florida began to revive their solar manufacturing, which, by the way, had occurred from 1900 to the 1930s and 40s, there was an enormous industry in the sunny parts of the United States, Florida being the leader for solar hot water systems. It's not like people didn't know. But it had been buried when the oil age, after the discovery of Middle Eastern oil and the cheapness that we were able to acquire it with, everything dealing with renewable energy had either been lost, forgotten, buried, or dismantled. So, because of the oil crisis, Carter put solar panels on the White House. Sadat in Egypt, after coming to the Camp David Accords and they'd established their peace with Israel, they put solar panels on every government building and on schools in Egypt. The Israelis move way forward because they're a small country that doesn't have much resources, so they invest heavily in solar, and even on apartment buildings and high-rises and banks in Tel Aviv, they'll even build the roofs facing south with a slope so they could put solar hot water panels, and in some cases solar electric panels, on the roofs of commercial buildings in Israel. And Israel becomes the leader over there, 95% solar penetration starting in the 70s and moving on till today. So what we were told in high school, forget what the president is doing. Don't pay any attention to that. Solar doesn't work because you won't be able to take a hot shower in the morning. And we Americans like to take our showers before we go to work in the morning. And by then, it'll all have cooled off. So I lived my whole life with this misperception. They gave us diagrams of how some enterprising families had built in their basement molten salt reservoirs so that the heat could stay, and insulated it with this incredible space-age insulation so that the hot water was available when you wanted it. So you wouldn't have to be like those people over there where they use solar over in the Middle East, where you got to take your showers at night. It turned out to be utter nonsense. I get to Cairo, Egypt. I'm doing my research in 2003. I start building solar hot water systems myself because I move into a part of Egypt, part of the slums, where they have unreliable electricity, where they rarely have hot water. And so I want hot water every day. It's Egypt after all. It's certainly sunny. And I get a plastic barrel, and I just put foam insulation around it and spray foam the top, and lo and behold, it holds the heat within 10 degrees Celsius all night long so that I can take a hot shower in the morning. Now, I didn't believe that we could do that here at Rosebud with a handmade solar hot water system with stretch wrap that doesn't get the water all that hot, and students applied insulation on a simple plastic water barrel. But if you look right now, it's in the morning, the sun has not yet started shining on this, it's still cold from the night, it's still opaque. But if I turn on my my multimeter here, you'll see that the ambient temperature right now outside is 64 degrees Fahrenheit. And when I turn on the hot water and I put this in, I'm at 103, 104, and that's because I'm right where the air is. It's much hotter inside, but 104, it's burning my hand actually. That's fever temperature. I got a fever of 103. I said I'm hot-blooded. Check it and see. 105, 106. And that's after some losses coming down this pipe. So inside, oh, you want to?
I had to touch it. Yeah,
you have to touch it.
I did. Yeah.
That's enough to take a hot shower, a hot bath.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to come over here, we can look inside this and see how this functions. I don't know if I can, you can climb up here. So the kids at Academy at the Lakes High School, who are going to be coming here today, they took this lid and they put double styrofoam here because heat is lost in your head. Look at that steam. Look at the steam coming out. Whoa. There you go. Look at that steam. And then they foamed this. But if you stick your hand in, you feel the heat up at the top. Right? Go ahead and put your hand in there, Jerry.
Woo, yeah.
Yeah. So there we're at 107.
Jacuzzi right there.
107, 108. And that's after a long night.
All night. And it's actually kind of cool this morning.
Yep, it is. 109, we got 109 there. Now you'll notice if I put this down lower, watch the temperature fall off. It's 103 now, 98 going down, 94, still well within bath or shower temperature the lower I go, 89, 87 toward the bottom, and that is down here. Let's see how far low we at. That's down at the bottom. Okay, so the very bottom of the tank, which had 65-degree water in it yesterday, heated up over the day, and the very bottom of the tank is still 84, 85, which is not bad for a bath or a shower. But when I rise it up a little bit, it gets to 92, 93. And what point is that at? Let's go check. 93 is right here. So where the cold water is coming out. And the reason it's colder down below is because no cold water was able to leave because there was a curve in the tank and I put the cold water out too high, meaning that down here it's dead water, and it's still in the late 80s.
We just pulled this pipe out.
Oh.
Sorry.
Oh, yes, I'll take care of that. You stay there. And that's interesting to know, because let's see what the water temperature is at the solar panel.
Yeah, I was curious about that too.
It's at 75, 73, 77. Actually, this is coming out of the tank, which is why, let me see here. 71, 72. So it's cold water in the tank still, but it's going to heat up over the day. So the lesson we've learned here is that we really should have taken the extra time, and maybe I'll do this by putting an elbow down. I'll put an elbow inside, reaching to the bottom, because water does this thing called stratification. There's something called the thermocline. You've noticed it from a lake or a swimming pool when you go in. Oh wait, just one second before you go down. I want to show that the way we fill this tank, and this was an innovation we came up with in Egypt, is I put a float valve so that when this water level goes down, it opens a valve letting cold water go in. There's an elbow and a pipe. Oh, the pipe fell out. Another reason this isn't working all as well as we can. This pipe here, which I didn't glue, goes here. Okay, so now the cold water when it goes in has to go to the bottom. So let me show you again. So there's a pipe here going to the bottom of the tank from an elbow in this float valve. So when the cold water comes in, when the hot water is being used and going to the shower, which is coming out there, and I always go down a few feet so I can get about 20 gallons of really hot water so I can take a shower, it lowers the float valve, which opens the valve and lets cold water go to the bottom, and the cold water pushes the hot water up. The thing about cold and hot water, as I mentioned about a lake or a swimming pool, is the top can be perfectly hot and it can be dead cold at the bottom. And if you've ever gone scuba diving, you'll realize this too. You just stick your hand in, it's super hot and then super cold where your fingertips are, and it's like there's a line between the hot and the cold. That's called the thermocline line. And if you don't mix the water, it'll stay there and you will not lose heat to the cold because heat rises. So it can be freezing at the bottom of the tank, and right above it you can have super hot water. And it will not, if you don't mix it, it will not lose heat down. It can only go up. So think of hot water as a bubble rising and cold as just no movement. And so you will not lose heat by having a freezing bottom as long as you insulate your head, insulate the top. So that was what the design we came up with in Egypt and started working really well. We got USAID funding to help a lot of people who were in need of humanitarian assistance, and trained them to be their own solar producers using cheap materials. The research goes on here at Rosebud with the students of Blake High School, and there's only one other thing I want to show you that we're real excited about, and that is, and let you get down there for a second. And the reason why Jerry's having to climb up there is because you have to have your cold water source above your solar panels for the thermosiphon to work. But we have a model of it here. And if Jerry, you want to take this again. So this here is a solar hot water system where we bought commercial vacuum tube solar tubes. These are vacuum tubes because a vacuum is a great insulator. And then there's a copper coil that goes through, coming in here, looping through and coming out. And I've turned it on its side so that I can passively thermosiphon from the bottom. This is always on a rise, going up. And so it's the same thing, cold water at the bottom of the tank, going in, going through the copper coils that gets heated, coming up all day. This is not insulated, so we're not going to see the same temperatures. So it's dead cold. And this would show you what it's like if I didn't have the insulation on that tank. Right now, even at the top, we're at 66. Woohoo! Right?
Chile.
As we go down to the bottom, we're still at 66, 64, 66. So it's only in the middle of the day when we come back, we'll put our hands in here, we'll be up at about 90, 95. Maybe we'll get up to 100 where the hot water comes in here. The bottom of the tank will be cold at 66, and this will demonstrate this effect. We have kids come and stick their hands and go, ow, it's hot here, and then, wow, it's cold down there. So I'm burning the top of my hand and my fingers are freezing. So this is one of the things we like to do at Rosebud, is give that kind of hands-on lived experience to dispel those myths that plagued me when I was a high school student all those years ago. And of course we have the solar electric over here. And the last thing I want to say about this is we've put this IBC tank here, which is going to be a SolarCity's IBC tank biodigester, because people have asked, how do you keep the biodigesters at the best production temperature, which is body temperature? Obviously we have above body temperature water in here. We have 200 liters. This is 5 times 200 liters. This is 1,000 liters. So it would take a week of filling this. Every day we would take this, drain it into here, take this, drain it into here, and we can use these panels, we've now found out, to heat a biodigester in a week. And we will we'll get back to you on that experiment to show the biogas world that using solar hot water you can have high production temperatures for your biodigester. Thank you for Solar Cities. I'm T.H. Culhane, along with Jerry Camellis.